negotiating period in the open market.
That's going to be fun.
Highest bidder.
Well, good afternoon,
Everyone's addicted.
ladies and gentlemen. Happy spring break to all of you hardworking people who don't take spring break. Appreciate you being here. We're having a sort of not necessarily abbreviated session, but a slim crowd. I'm not talking about my physical physique, but the number of people present. And I see that we have a few people joining us by Zoom today. Denise Deaver, Lance Kyle, and Milan Mikulek is there. We don't have minutes March 1st. Is that right, Erica? Okay. So we'll skip that. Next item is public comment. Anybody from the audience here like to comment? Yes, ma'am. Come in, Ms. Rudd. Again, 3 minutes, please.
Yes, Alex Rudd, Kendall County. We are now going shortly into the advisory committee stage, according to the mobility plan website. And I want to remind you, before you go into that phase, it's critical not to forget the environmental constraints that have been mentioned briefly by members of the committee. 3 years ago, we had a problem. TxDOT failed to acknowledge this, and certainly a lot of us have not forgotten that. Today, stepping off for a second, the Bernie Star on the front page had a great article showing some of the vulnerabilities of the Trinity Aquifer, mainly that there's variability in the aquifer structure, the hydrology, and we cannot predict the effects of drought or increased development on the availability of this water. We cannot forget that. Many like to believe the aquifer is huge, there's unlimited, plentiful supply. We don't know that for certain. There's more evidence that that is not the case. We need to listen to these scientists. Especially now, knowing this, we cannot afford to compromise the safety of our water supply in any way. Certainly not looking forward to more development with traffic, managing runoff, or any other possibility of contaminating it. I spoke with Annalisa Peace a few weeks ago. We talked about these sand pits that were mentioned by Commissioner Durden. She said, according to the Edward rules in the 90s, TxDOT does not monitor these sand pits once the project is completed. Who monitors these after that? I'm trying to find out. I suspect it's Texas Commission on Environmental Quality. I'm waiting for feedback. I cannot verify if they're monitored other than looking at the sand pits, if there's water samples being taken, how long this has gone on, how frequently. We need to find out all of that before we go any further. There's a project on US 290 in Austin and 1604 right now over the recharge zone that is relying on these sand pits, and yet we need to know how they work, if they work, and how effective they are. I'm doing preliminary research, and what I found so far is a study by the Geological Society of Kansas, and this is showing, this was a residential area, and these were sand pits. They did 6 testing sites with multiple well water quality monitoring at each site. This is showing areas of concern, what I found so far. Sand pits definitely help prevent contamination. However, their effectiveness over a recharge zone, over groundwater, is not for sure. Definitely, it's vulnerable to water flow going downhill, to the amount of water, to the amount of contamination. And we certainly cannot rely on the fact that there's sand pits present, and we're just going to trust that the water quality is good. There's evidence that arsenic, heavy metals, and other compounds of decomposing pesticides are present. Thank you.
You want to finish your thought and get to a stopping
Yes,
point?
yes.
Come back and do that. Go ahead.
Real quick, I have to leave at 3:40.
Okay.
Basically, we need to really explore and analyze how effective sand pits or vegetation mats are going to be. We cannot sacrifice safety. We cannot go back in time. There's evidence that they may not be infallible, and we need to confirm that before we go any further. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Rudd. Anyone else in the audience like to make Ms. McCarthy?
Wanda McCarthy, Ammon Road. My question is that there has been a lot of evidence brought forward by community people in the comment section, and in reviewing the minutes, none of that information, which is understandable, is present in the minutes. Is there any way for the community to get, for instance, Ms. Rudd's extensive research on environment? Different people have brought in from Civil O Nature Center, the Friends of the Civil O. A lot of important information has been brought forward by community members. And unless they watch the video, is there any document that adds that to the minutes of this committee? I would request that they would be summarized and included in the comments and the minutes of this committee as it moves forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. McCarthy. Tom, are you raising your hand? No? Okay, back in. Is that Ms. Couch? It is.
Hi, Jan Couch, Bobber Oaks Road. And I just wanted to make a comment on something that I've seen online. It's a newspaper article from the Dripping Springs area. Some of you may be familiar with it, but the city of Dripping Springs has put a moratorium on development. They did that last fall, and they have just extended it again. So when I know the county has very little to be able to do about development, but there are certain tools that the city can use. And I went to the open house last week, and I looked at the things that the city displayed, and I looked at the mobility plan and the maps that they have, and asked a question about, well, what's going to happen with what the Transportation Committee does and what is on this master plan for the city. And I was told, oh, well, they're basically the same thing. They're basically working off the same map, and they're going to really look the same. And I thought, well, this is the interesting instance of when the person asking the question has attended a lot of meetings that the person answering the question has not attended. But my point in all this is if the city needs time at the end of this to reconcile these maps and figure out, or the suggestions to the map, and figure out what the best route is, I would think a viable reason for applying for one of these moratoriums could be transportation, could be wastewater. The city of Dripping Springs had about 6 areas that they said they needed more time to process, and they are actually just not allowing anybody to break any more ground until they get all this worked out. Apparently the citizens of Austin are fleeing to Dripping Springs in alarming numbers. So that article is online. I've got the link to it, and there's several backup articles to it, but they're in their second 90-day moratorium. So this at least gives some breathing room if the city of Boerne were to want it. Maybe they don't. But anyway, that's my comment. And if anybody's interested in that article, I do have the links. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Couch. Anyone else in the audience? Ms. Deaver or Mr. Kyle, you want to say anything at this point? Okay, we're going to move on. Committee members, y'all should have at your place a schedule. Looks like this right here, a spreadsheet. And no action required on this, just to kind of call your attention to the gray bar. We are at March 15th. This is the schedule we put forward, so you can kind of see the progress that we're making. We may be a little bit behind on some of our policy recommendations, but I think that's just simply we have not seen the work of the committee that's been coming forward, and I expect that we'll see that at the next meeting and have a sense that we're beginning to get caught up. We're actually, you'll see today we're blending our short and long range recommendations. We're going to start plowing through those. So I feel like we're more or less on schedule. We just need to continue to focus our efforts on getting all of this done. So good work. Any comments from you, Bob?
The only additional comment I have is when you look at the schedule, we are 2 weeks from when we thought we would have some preliminary projects and policies identified for the city of Bernie's consideration as they get ready for a bond election. We're probably not going to be completely through there, but I think for those of you who've been watching what's been going on at the last few meetings, we are plowing through projects and rejecting a whole bunch that are fairly informative in some of the quadrants of the city, and some of the things hadn't been addressed yet. It's just that we've got a lot of heavy lifting and a lot of work left to do, and I appreciate everybody focused on doing it. And let's just keep driving. We've got to cover every topic, every policy, and every project.
Any comments from the committee members about schedule or opening comments for that matter?
I was just going to comment, we decided to reach out to George Venny to get him to actually edit, to provide his actual language for the policy document so that we're getting it,
Okay.
spot on. And he was kind enough to get back to us with that language. So there may be some other information that maybe I don't know if it's found its way to the meeting minutes, but that we can make sure we capture. And I know Mrs. Taylor had come to us and talked about how quickly water can be conveyed through the recharge zone, as an example. I know that was, I think, eye-opening for a lot of people. So we can certainly include those things in that policy recommendation documents where we're highlighting known concerns. Let's put it that way.
Okay.
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
I have equally sized packets of information here. Are they redundant and just in a different order? This from last week and this from this week?
Last week's is where we were last week. But the package this week is nothing, it's limited to projects that we have agreed to move forward. Last week were some projects that were still in awaiting final.
So you're saying this that showed up today
That's
are
what we're-
projects that we've said go forward?
Well, to the next level of consideration.
Okay, thank you. And then we have a smaller package of projects here.
Right, we'll get it. That is this, I believe it is the same, is that a list of?
This,
Yeah,
this is a little map.
Yeah, the
it's
little.
kind of an index
Consider this a table of contents.
Yeah, okay.
For the bigger package.
that you got today.
Okay,
For you to look at something quickly, you can find it there.
thank you.
Okay, and before we get into that, at a recent Commissioners Court meeting, we approved the purchase of the streetlight data subscription. And so I think we've concluded that purchase, and we're ready now to, at the county, to receive questions from this committee about what information you want. We have 100, I think they call it 100 zones, and that we ask what a zone is. It's complicated, but basically, if you, depending on how you configure your question, it can involve 100 locations one location can involve like 10 zones. So I'm going to suggest that we ask several questions that this committee wants to know that could be derived from streetlight data, and that we forward those and see how many zones that would be. And I'm just suggesting some things like this. This is strictly a straw man. One question would be, what is the truck composition on Main Street south of River Road? What is the truck composition on Main Street north of River Road? What is the truck composition on FM 1376, or on Main Street north of 1376? What's the origin destination for vehicles on at the SH 46 3351 intersection? What are the turning movements at Adler and Esser? What are the turning movements at Adler School, Maine?
No, we have those, you know.
No, well, we may, some of these may come from Jeff's.
Yeah, but that's on the 6 to 9 and 4 to 6. Because I've been working on those, getting all those intersections figured out.
Okay.
But what happens between the middle of the day and the middle of the night?
Does that show origin and destination though? What you're talking about is just traffic counts?
It's
The
just traffic
street light
count.
shows some more data that,
Oh, yeah, we need more.
right.
Because what I'm trying to do now is take these intersections with all this data and figure out from this intersection, like on Main, going north from this intersection, what's the traffic? And I can tell you how many trucks or cars, and then what's going south, and then compare that from like Blanco in Maine, then go up to Johns Road in Maine, School Street, and go back and see how they actually compare. In other words, the traffic going north from, say, River Road to, well, I guess Roosevelt, not Roosevelt, but
Rosewood.
Rosewood. And in between, have you lost traffic?
What's the
And then
leakage at?
where's it going? And that's what I'm working on right now. But that's only in the morning and in the evening. And it's surprising, some of the low turning movements on some of those. So, anyhow,
You know, those are some of the questions that I just throw out there, but we do need to give the county some specific articulation of those questions so that they can get the information back to us. I know, Betsy, you have been probably the chief inquisitor here.
Yeah, I think there's that activity beyond, on 46, beyond the batch plants coming in towards town to see if the traffic picks up further out from the batch plants, or does it pick up with the batch plants? But then also looking further down along 46 coming towards town to see if in fact where that traffic gains momentum, to help better understand where that potential third, hopefully not, connection between 46 and 10 should be located, or is it already adequately located and undersized? In other words, if you place it where the mayor of Fair Oaks recommended in that zone, does that really give us additional relief? Or does it miss the traffic, where the traffic picks up?
I'm not sure how I'm going to frame that question for streetlights.
Yes, well, good luck with that. But that was one of the bigger questions.
Okay. So is the question, what would the optimum location for a north-south connector be? Is that what you're after?
I certainly am not looking for that.
No, I understand that.
Yeah, but that's the question. In other words, I'm suspecting that we have a lot of traffic from Champion that clouds Herf and River Road. And does putting something beyond the high school actually help in between the high school and 3351? Or not? So
Can we infer an answer from knowing what, if we knew the traffic composition at Herf and River Road and the timing of those traffic counts during the day?
Old San Antonio and
Right.
Herf in Maine. Didn't we talk about
Yeah.
that?
I mean, if we knew those counts and the timing of those counts.
And the origin.
Yeah,
Well,
can we do source and destination
Origin and destination.
for that intersection at Herf and River Road, SR?
Boulevard.
And, well, just that one intersection that we have all identified as the worst intersection.
that.
And so,
right.
Bitsy, you've implied or flat out stated more than once on this committee, what is the problem we're going to solve if we improve that intersection? So that leads right into where are they coming from and where are they going to and at what time?
Right.
So I think that intersection to be put under a microscope would be
Is that
well.
possible to do? Didn't we ask that question about, because we know that traffic is turning right, like big time on Herf Road. It's headed towards probably Champion High School at certain times. So figuring out if they're coming off of Old San Antonio or Main Street, like, and those origins, if that's possible, that's going to tell us a lot, I would think.
I would think too.
So, number one in your mind is origin destination for traffic on River Road, Herf intersection. Okay.
And I think the exploration of what's going on at North and South Main was the other big question that's been discussed.
When
ad
you say
nauseam.
what's going on,
In other words, who's going where and from where? And in particular, there was some dubious information about the through traffic coming from East 46, going north out of Bernie, that I don't know has truly been explored thoroughly, when common sense tells you that the majority of that traffic is heading to the south and San Antonio. So I think looking further beyond, and are we seeing true out-of-county traffic, or are we seeing just an increased volume of traffic coming off the batch plants, to service their customers?
so origin destination for traffic on North Main, say north, south, and central.
Are you
And
talking about,
the truck composition.
Pretty much.
are you talking about actual origin and destination, or are you talking about traffic? Let me explain this. Origin destination means they started in New Braunfels and came here.
Right.
I don't think that's what we're worrying about. Are we worrying about more like, say, on 46, coming in towards town? How much of that traffic would actually go south to 10, or how much of it would go somewhere else? That you can take off of the traffic counts we have, pretty much. In other words, it's the incoming traffic on 46. How much of it is diverted eventually south? Now, I think the traffic counts we have should be able to tell that.
So, John, I actually agree with you perfectly. And that was what the community brought up to TxDOT ad nauseum. And the city, in fact, and I'm sorry Jeff is not here it was before his time, but absolutely denied that information. Just said, oh no, we've proven it otherwise. So you're right. The traffic counts, when you look at I-10, actually, to the west and to the east of Bernie, I mean, it's very clear. It's 3 times the traffic to the going towards San Antonio as it is going west. But no, that was completely denied. So that is, I mean, I do agree with you.
That's, like I say, that's what I'm working on right now, but it's only morning and evening. It's not all day. But that's what you need to know is how much of the traffic coming in westbound on 46, where does it go? Well, that's what I'm working on at home. So much of it goes here, so much goes there. And I've got numbers, and I can now break it down into percentages. And the percentages, if you want to just expand them to the future, although I don't know that that's necessarily the best way, is just to expand. I think we need to look at what's actually happening that's generating this. So I don't know, I need to do more work, but it's interesting. But yeah, you can actually figure out of the traffic coming in, where does it go? How much of it going here, there, yonder?
I think a look at it is worthwhile.
Okay.
Because there's been so much debate about whether you can make that assumption or not. And I think it would help many of us in the community to calm down and say, okay, well, maybe so then. And if so, then now what do we want to do?
Okay.
But these counts that I'm looking at on 46, there's 2 or 3 major places you can see just all of a sudden where all this additional traffic is coming from. And that's what we need to know. Well, what are we going to do with it? How are we going to reroute it someday? So,
Marcus, from Fair Oaks' perspective, is there anything, question that you would ask the county to provide information? Or?
Yes, and I'll probably summarize it in an email and shoot it to you, because I know
Okay.
that there's with the streetlight data, did we incorporate Comal County? Or
We
parts?
haven't, they're in the sales business and they've agreed to work with us as well.
Okay, so then I'll pick a location, because I know that the intersection of 3351 and 46 was of importance to figure out how much traffic's going 3351, how much traffic's going into town. And then obviously somewhere further down, past probably Cordillera, is the Cordillera folks, are they going into Bernie, or are they going 3351? I know something that wasn't brought up. Or where's the cutoff, I guess, for the folks that choose to go to use 46 in town to
Kind of the same information,
Yeah.
just from your perspective.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But I'll put that in the summary and I'll shoot it to you.
Okay.
And I guess with the same, hopefully it incorporates Dietz. I don't know if you.
Yeah, I mean,
Okay, so then Dietz was a big concern, how much cut-through traffic is going through Dietz and how that's affecting.
okay. If you would shoot those to me.
Yeah.
Gary, from Comfort's perspective, SH 27.
I would think, coming in out of the good week for failing Boy Scouts, but coming from Kerrville, if that's coming from the west or coming from the north, through town, and then all the way past where 27 catches 87 again, and what we can analyze the version on the 473.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of chatter about how many more trucks there are, and there could be with the gravel mines up in Kerr County. So
That's true, and I'm not sure if we can pick up speed relationships with not how we have this information or not. Or if it's-
I don't think that gives us speed.
And then whether you want to jump down to 289, and have the issue related to the high-intensity of the road.
I mean,
There's demographics there that are critical to what we can address with high traffic. And then finally, because it's still in the precinct, is the Ammon Road, Main School Road, and entire mile.
okay. Well, I've got 8 things on the list there, and I will pass those along and see if we can get some answers and get those back in time to incorporate into our report. Moving into now the things, the heavy lifting. Item number 6 is called Discuss Scope and Organization of Crowdsource Projects Previously Approved for further consideration and process for final disposition into long and short range programs with committee comments. This package that we handed out here covers that there should be 77 projects or recommendations here. Those 77 projects cover 40 different roadways. Behind your agenda, as Northern said, there's a table of contents, and they're in the same order, or should be in the same order that these projects are in. For example, the first one on the list, over in the second column, you'll see Road 1, and then it says the number next to it is 22. On the table of contents, the title of that document is called Crowdsource Data Master Combined. Everybody with me? Okay. In the lower right-hand corner of the colored thing, you'll see reference ID number 22. So the table of contents says this is a roundabout, part of a system to efficiently bypass downtown without stopping at stoplights. And you can see from the sketch there that what's proposed by this crowdsource comment is a roundabout at the 5 Points intersection. Now, what we would like to do is start going through these. We are not going to get through all 77 today. In fact, we may not get through very many of these today. But what we'd like to do is get a determination made about each of these pages. One option is we're going to move this forward and put it on the short-term recommendation list. Option 2, we're going to move it forward to the long-term recommendation list. And the third option is we're not going to move this onto either list. If we move it on to a short list or a long-term list, there may be some additional language that's needed to further clarify what we're moving and describe it for the people that get the report and answer their questions. Bob, do you have any additional comments about that, or you want to restate that in your words?
No, I think it's well stated. We're going to be asking for some help from specific committee members for any of that additional language that may be needed. Doesn't need to take a long time. It's all got to live on one sheet of paper. We're just trying to be complete with our information and as accurate about what the context was as possible so that we can vote. Now, if we're going to be making official decisions on some of these today, that they are, in fact, full committee recommendations, we need to be clear on governance. Given the small size of our group today, what does it take for it to declare consensus?
Do we have a quorum?
We've decided a quorum's what we want it to be, because we can't make everybody be here.
I think the quorum was 75% of the members present,
Okay.
assuming there was adequate. We have, I
Not
think,
of the members present, but of the members.
8 members present.
What happened, John, we have, remember we started with 20 people, and there's been 2 or 3 people just fall off the end of the earth. And so they're not here, they've not been replaced, they don't have any historical context about what's going on. And if we were to say 75% of that original list, we'd never have a quorum if anybody else was absent. So this committee made a decision some time ago that rather than get into that tar pit, we're just going to say the people that are attending are the quorum.
So
Otherwise, you never get any business done.
We all agreed we need to get business done.
Yeah.
I'm looking at the first couple of projects, and I think, the roundabout on North Main is kind of, there's no debating about that. We've all said yay. We haven't had a whole lot of objection to it from the audience. It seems like that would be fairly easy for this quorum to go ahead and say, let's move it on. And then when we get to something that doesn't have that kind of consensus, generally speaking, either from the attendees or from ourselves, I'd say move it away and come back to it when we have a larger group.
Certainly, that's an option as well.
I mean, we can at least go through a couple of pages of these by doing it that way. I mean, the second one is a pedestrian bike piece that it seems like that should probably move over into Ben's subcommittee to come back again after they've finessed it a little bit, and then we move on to the third one. And I think we can get fairly deep into at least what I've looked at here.
Yeah, I agree, and I want to add my 2 cents there. The only hiccups we've had with this recommendation, which I think is wildly popular in the community, is to put a roundabout up at 5 Points. Well, there's 2 or 3, but one was the text dot said never, because we're going to have to buy the gas station, and we're not going to get into environmental. John Kite drew one that didn't. John Kite's also cautioned this committee. I think it's a terrific comment. This may not be the only roundabout I hope it's not the only roundabout you guys recommend, but the first one built better work.
Mm-hmm. Well, in this one here, I've looked at it and did a bunch of stuff. And first of all, TxDOT isn't going to work with us. They're not going to do it. Secondly, buying the service station and all that is going to make it horribly expensive to start with. Thirdly, a roundabout there, with these streets coming in at these wild angles, it really doesn't work all that great. The angles they're coming in, like Main and School coming in at an angle like this, that's not, it needs to be closer to right angles to really work. The other thing is, and I've showed you on the presentation I made, was to bring Adler, just curve it and actually create a four-section intersection. The signals are already there. You wouldn't have to change anything. And then the upper School Street, the cutoff, would move over and tie into Main Street a little bit to the north. Well, some of the consultants working for the city come up with that same idea. So to me, I would say let's put this as short term, something we need to do right now. And if we use that other method, we could do it at very low cost and get it working.
Northern, is that on our list?
That's right. Yeah.
But like I say, the roundabout there is not ideal due to the angles of the streets approaching it. And this other way where you turn Adler directly into, and it would line up with School Street. And the signals are already there. And the other one, you just switch the Citadel cutoff a little bit north, and I think it would all work great.
Well, I agree it should be a short-term recommendation.
Yes.
I think our recommendation ought to be qualified by saying there's strong support for the concept of a roundabout, but there's not sufficient technical information on whether it can really work or not. And so, as part of this initial feasibility, if they accept the recommendation and move forward, there would be an assessment of what's the best way to improve this intersection.
Yeah.
With some deference given to a roundabout, and if it just doesn't work, it doesn't work, and then you go to the next best alternative.
I think with respect to this particular intersection, to acknowledge that this might be a long-term solution, but that other short-term, simpler solutions are available, and I hope we can get to them within this document. Do you know?
Simply for my personal suggestion for 5 points, we have a recommendation from the interim report, a very nicely written recommendation. I would suggest we simply edit that one as you all see fit, rather than having to craft a whole new one. We can link it to this number 22, but just say number 22 was regarding the 5 points intersection, and let this one you see on your screen from the interim report. Let's edit that one to cover 5 points, however you want to.
So another thing, that getting this intersection taken care of is going to impact what we do in other parts of the city shortly. And one of the things I'm looking at now is what can we do for detours to work on HERF ESSER 46? It could be that we could go up to Adler and across. That would be your detour. And, I mean, it's not necessarily the greatest thing to do because you're putting a tremendous amount of traffic. But we need to think in long terms. If that's what we want to do, we probably need to upgrade Adler to 3 lanes to start with. Do something with that intersection of Adler and Main and all that. And then that would be maybe the bypass route. But these are things we need to think about. And this would be directly involved in doing that, so you can do something with 46 and Harf Road.
Northern, let me go back to your suggestion, which, are you suggesting that we use the narrative under committee recommendation if applicable, that's, or is there some other narrative?
No, I believe the narrative already created under the committee recommendation from the interim report should cover it, and we can just say that.
Do y'all want to take just a minute? Or The audience doesn't have this, so I'm going to read the interim report narrative that we're suggesting. Northern's suggested that it be moved forward with this included. A roundabout has been considered in the past for this intersection, but because that configuration involved right-of-way acquisition, it has not been pursued. Committee members have worked on several roundabout concept sketches and have several designs that are more efficient, less obtrusive, minimize right-of-way takings, and are likely less expensive to construct. Another suggestion involves making Adler a through street instead of School Street. In this scenario, left-hand turns from Adler to School and left-hand turns from Schools to Adler would be prevented by a median in Adler. Regardless of the form the intersection improvement takes, it will be important that its proximity to important pedestrian facilities be considered.
That's good.
So, short-term recommendation, is that the consensus?
Short term, put it on
I
short
would say
term.
yes.
Done.
Did we just have our first official recommendation agreed on?
I didn't hear the angels singing or band playing.
Because it's the second time you recommended it.
Second item is Highway 27 in Comfort. Well, that is a bike ped issue. How did we get that in there?
So this one, this was also included in the traffic. I think this is one where we had several for 27. And again, it's another one that we already have a recommendation in the interim report for Highway 27.
Okay,
Might be used
so
for-
let's take this one to Ben, right?
Yes, we can do that.
Ben/Northern, she's involved.
Is this the bike and pedestrian things?
Yeah.
Yeah, Ben, be prepared. There's, by
she's-
the informal count I just had, it was 99.
Wow.
100 now.
Northern's involved in the committee, the subcommittee, so it's our subcommittee now.
But the idea to take 99 or 100 random ideas and fold them into y'all's master plan seems to make all the sense in the world. You can clean up a whole lot of work and then bring us
Exactly.
back.
That's exactly the
visionary
point.
thing that you've always been wanting to do. Just be cognizant of what these are so that they're not ignored.
Yep, sounds good. Sounds good. Marcus is also involved, by the way.
Very good. Okay, item 3.
Don, just for clarification, related to the interim report, the component of 27 is part of the interim report. Are we looking at parts and pieces throughout these 77 items?
These are called crowdsource recommendations.
Gary, can you make sure your microphone's on, please?
It's on.
And so what we want to do is come back when we have more committee members here, and we will go through the committee source recommendations, which will include the interim recommendations that were forwarded back, in beginning of last year.
Right.
So at that time, we will consider that and see whether we want to take it
So
short
we're
term.
just taking that single component about the pedestrian component of 27,
Right,
lobbing it to Ben.
yes.
Good, thank you.
And we are paying attention to comfort. In fact, there's a lot of energy around comfort.
You've impressed a lot of comfort people.
Okay, moving back to project number, reference ID number 97. This is a recommendation for a roundabout at the intersection of, I believe that's Herf Road, is that right?
Yeah, and
No, excuse me.
Woods of,
It's not Herf Road.
Champions and
Yeah,
Champion Boulevard?
yeah.
yeah.
Where is it?
Champion Boulevard.
46.
And Woods of Burton.
Okay.
You're talking about Champion Boulevard and 46 now.
That is the recommendation. on this from the crowdsource. I personally believe.
The 46 traffic is a whole lot different than the traffic coming the other way. I don't know that that would be a desirable intersection to try a roundabout on.
I think there were some other alternates about expanding the turn lane. Is that, am I remembering correctly?
Well, I think what you're talking about, I think a lot of these intersections could be improved just by putting right turn lanes, right turn acceleration lanes, and center refuge lanes.
That's what I recall.
But the type of traffic we're talking about, one is a residential traffic that you're intermixing with through highway traffic. I don't know that that would be.
I share your concerns about this, John.
I'm not real.
Well, going back to I guess both of y'all's points there, it's that wide nodes, narrow roads concept, right? So regardless of whether it's a roundabout, the idea is let's just make sure that people are moving through there efficiently as we start to see more housing developments and more traffic come from that side.
So I think your recommendation is similar to 5 points, but, I mean, roundabout might not be the right solution, but a
Improved intersection
is
I mean,
And
it needs
it's
to be
not
done.
jammed.
Something needs
It's
to be
not
done.
jammed up now, but it's going to get jammed up probably.
Well, I think I bet you we're going to see a series of Highway 46 roundabouts proposed in this packet. And John, to Bitsy's plea to us all along, what problem are we trying to solve? I think the problem may be to not make Highway 46 traffic come to a stop every 150 yards.
Right.
Getting out of town. If they had to slow down and go through a roundabout, it's preferable to stopping, starting. Has way less to do with the cross traffic than it does with keeping the 46 traffic moving. And I don't know how other types of road intersection improvements would accomplish that.
Right.
I'm not advocating for it. I think I'm clear on what's trying to be solved by this. A series of, where Highway 46 East headed out to New Braunfels is just a whole series of roundabouts.
It facilitates flow. That's the point of roundabouts.
Well,
And
the way maybe here would be a grade separation for 46. And underneath, you could do an urban intersection or urban interchange, if you know what that is, where you have pretty much free flow. But the bulk of the traffic would be going over. And the residential stuff, the local stuff would be with a improved intersection type deal. Something to look at.
well, so I understand. So you guys are traffic engineers. I'm hearing you guys show some hesitance. I don't know where Marcus is on that perspective. I have been to, heck, in Massachusetts, I've been in scenarios where you go along the major highway and you come into these areas with a lot less traffic coming in from left and right, but you still hit a roundabout and it functions. Is it that it doesn't work? Or is this a feeling? Is this based off of lots of experience?
You know what he's talking about. This is a hybrid, and I don't think I've ever seen it, but I can see it working. You grade separate 46. You've got your typical entrance and exit routes. But then when you get underneath, you could have a roundabout.
That sounds like a lot of infrastructure, like flyover kind of bridge, right?
So I think I'm going to step in perhaps because I'm the most ignorant of all the engineers in the room. And what we're trying to do is the low-hanging fruit, and that sounds to me like the sort of maximum great idea, no doubt about it, if that's where our attention needs to be paid. But I think just that simple short-term look at the acceleration and deceleration lanes and the turning lanes and see if we can't just make that move a little bit more people through and leave those bigger ideas for.
I still want to throw, I hear you on that one, and I think, Marcus has got a good point about maybe throw in the recommendation that we consider roundabout, but I sit there and go, well, what would Carmel, Indiana do, where they've actually been really doing this stuff, not where some of us maybe have encountered a few every here and there. Would they see something like this working? Have they figured it out? Because they have already done a lot of trial and error. Yeah.
I think we ought to put short-term with study on this, because I think all of these high capacity or high intersection, high volume intersections, there need to be something done with them. And it needs to be short-term, but we need to figure out what it is we want to do.
The next three projects, it's the 97, 106, and 147, as Bob noted, are basically recommendations for roundabouts all on 46, and I think that is the right sequence, and maybe 97 is between 106 and 47. Tell me. But I think, it's possible that you could do some sort of series of roundabouts. It would change the whole character. It would change the speed of that area, and maybe that's desirable. I'd also say that SH 46 is a TxDOT roadway, and they're not inclined to do this anytime soon. So if we want to carry these three recommendations forward as a long-term recommendation for a study of this corridor here, I can see that happening with a preference for traffic calming mechanisms or something like that.
And I think another component of this is, if I'm not mistaken, each of those three intersections, the financial responsibility will be turned over to the city when it reaches 50,000, is that correct?
The signals,
Just the signals.
Just the city one?
just the signal, the light.
Yes, the light, yeah, the light.
So basically the light bill.
Yeah.
So if you had a roundabout, you wouldn't
Well,
have lights.
aren't looking at 46, just looking at it now, when you get over by New Braunfels in that area, they're handling all the signals. And I guess we could do that to start with, and then someday, I mean, what bothers me is, and I've done this too many times, trying to design a highway facility and then build it under traffic. It's a nightmare. And all of these places we're talking about here, trying to build them under traffic, there's not enough right of way to have access alongside of what you're building.
And
So-
I mean, a roundabout is, in my opinion, is not going to fit in the existing right-of-way
No.
of 46. Those are probably, 200-foot diameter, something,
Pretty significant.
and the right-of-way width there is 120 or less.
Maybe.
So we're talking about getting right-of-way on some corners that are.
Here again, you're mixing slow volume, slow traffic with high-speed traffic in a roundabout, and I don't know that works all that great.
Well, but long-term, John, I think you'll agree with me, it's going to be slow out there. That section is going to get slow, so what you want is kind of free-flowing rather than this sort
Stop
of
and go.
platooning. So I think it could work, but I'm not, I think it needs to be studied.
Yeah.
Can we just safely say to look at facilitating the flow through those intersections with synchronization of lights and possibly the addition of acceleration and deceleration lanes, and then boot it to a long-term, more comprehensive study of that whole roadway? Corridor.
Well, there's some benefit to having signal lights. Let's just imagine River Road out here, and you go to the medical doctor just outside there. Okay, you can't get in and out of there if you had a roundabout, but with a signal, it leaves a gap that gives you a chance to get in or off the highway. So we need to study this.
So I agree we need to study it, because I'm looking at Carmel right now, and I'm seeing scenarios just like what you're describing, where they've put in a roundabout. So art of the possible, I guess, and seeing what's worked for them. But also at the same time, to your point, it is TxDOT. But I will also counter that with saying that TxDOT's projects have gotten shot down now in Fredericksburg as well. So maybe there's some opportunity for them to listen to local communities. Just a thought.
Well, but there's a difference in what we're talking about. You're talking about a huge loop. We're talking about an intersection.
Well, no, I know, I get you, but my point being that, there may be some creative alternatives that TxDOT may be, maybe it's time for them to start to open their minds to.
Well, one of the facets from the, not Carmel, Indiana, it's Carmel, Indiana.
Sorry, Carmel, sorry.
The city engineer, one of his descriptors that was so stunning when we had him down here is that roundabouts are cheaper to build than massive intersections and quicker to build. So he was talking about roughly 6 months and $500,000, just if you had to throw a number at it, and then you're done. And so if a series of roundabouts out on 46 could be done for $4 million or $3 million, and all of a sudden traffic doesn't stop, that might be a congestion relief that solves an identifiable problem.
You're not going to get them built for $500,000.
Well, they did. He stood there and told us that.
I can guarantee you right now, you're not.
Well, that was 2 years ago, 3 years ago, so prices have changed.
Okay, so just paraphrasing what everyone has said. Recommend a long-term study of intersection options, including roundabouts, to facilitate nonstop flow of traffic on 46 East Corridor.
Well, I don't know that I limit it to roundabouts. I just think we need to study the whole thing.
But we want to make sure roundabouts are included in the study. Right.
I think it's, yeah.
Okay. Anybody want to edit that? Is it not?
I'll be glad to edit it
Okay.
and take all three of these projects, roll them into one. Is that right?
Yep, 97, 106, and 157 are rolling on.
Okay. Are you keeping track of who's supposed to do the editing here?
You're number one.
Yeah. Different connotations. But it is a long range, is that right? We've agreed it's long?
Yeah. Well, it's going to have to be. It's got to be programmed with TxDOT. So that's
Maybe,
long
but
range.
if the north side of 46 gets developed, that changes roundabouts,
That's right.
because then you don't have any property. So
That's right.
it kind of kills that. You know what I mean?
Early on, we all were instructed to not let our recommendations be altered by what city staff told us that they supported, because they didn't support much of anything on our initial list of proposed projects. Nor were we to have our decisions unduly affected by what TxDOT's opinion is, because they've been unable to get consensus in this community either. So just because we're up against the TxDOT barrier doesn't mean to me that we ought not to take our own ideas seriously.
Okay, moving forward to the next one, ID reference ID number 209. This is another SH46 that's quite a bit further out. It's by the Flags Business Park, is that right? Just before you get to the Bernie Flags Business Park. There needs to be a right turn lane going into Pleasant Valley at both ends where Pleasant Valley meets SH46. Very dangerous there.
Well, that's TxDOT, and that should come up in their TIP stuff. We should forward that to TxDOT.
Yeah. I think this should be a short-term recommendation. I know that is a very dangerous intersection. I was just
I'm good with that.
Send it on.
short, but we want to give it to TxDOT, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Reference ID 62. This is a pretty significant project. SH46 should be widened, and this is 46 West, should be widened with turn lanes and 4 travel lanes, and it shows from Interstate 10 all the way to
16.
Highway 16, or almost Highway 16 into, I guess it's
We
Bender.
did that in 1983. What's out there now was widened to what it is.
Right, but they,
What needs to happen, well, first of all, right of way. There's no right of way to do anything. And first thing they ought to do is get rid of some of the real sharp curves and gradients in there. But this is something, again, to forward to TxDOT.
I mean, this is a huge project, and I think it's way too much to do at one time. I would suggest that we either break it down into several projects,
Well,
or
we did it from county line to 16, and then from county line back to 10.
So the BISD numbers are very low in that area in terms of prospective growth over the next decade. And my opinion is it doesn't really push any, doesn't really push me to worry about it too terribly much.
I agree.
the whole project, yeah, I agree. I think closer into Bernie, it's going to be a different story.
And I think south of the downtown area going towards the southwest, but this area in particular had the least potential growth in the next decade, right?
It's up to Miralomas.
That's the one exception.
It's up to it.
That's, and the only challenge in that area is Miralomas,
Who's talking now?
which will be eventually about 1,000 homes. I don't know how on earth they're going to get people out of that neighborhood onto 46. If you're going east, that's one thing, but if you're going west, no, excuse me. If you're going west, that's one thing. If you're going east, that's a whole other thing. I don't know how people are going to get out of there. I assume there'll be a traffic light.
I would think so at some point.
Does anybody know where the conservation easement specifically is in their sensitive feature comments?
I know that, is that Miralomas? Is that within Miralomas?
No, that's Bob Webster's property, I believe.
Oh, it probably is.
Bob Webster's, that was on the south side, just before you get to that curve.
What I'm hearing is that this project, we just no longer consider, that we find a way to, is there anything subsequent closer in on 46 Northern?
The other one on 46 is very specific to a turnoff at the Follow Drive. No, I don't think there's any other widenings.
Well, I think it would be a mistake if we as a committee, or y'all as a committee, us as a committee, I don't know what the right word is, failed to say anything about 46, at least the closer part. So do we want to terminate this at some point, Miralomas?
Well, I'd send this in asking for not only here, but down where you go to Tapatio, because for years I've asked TxDOT to, that's going down a steep hill, to put an extra lane where people can start slowing down and turn right.
At Deep Hollow?
They've never done it. There's a culvert there. Well, that doesn't cost that much to extend the culvert 12 feet, but, I mean, this has been 15, 20 years ago I've been after them on that. But I'd still say we need to send this in.
Are we talking about 62 or 130 right now?
I'm talking about 130, which,
Oh, we're talking about 62.
Yeah.
well,
Well, I think 62 needs to.
Go away?
I thought you said 62, he was going to send it back. It's way more out of our control.
Well, unless there is no other reference to
That
the,
portion between Miralomas and I-10.
right. And if it is, then I say we modify 62 to go only out to Deep Hollow and say, which I think is where you're talking about, John.
Yeah.
I mean, we could combine Project 130 and Project 62.
Yep.
It says one project, and then we'll disregard the rest of 62 going back towards Bender.
That'd be good.
That would be a long-term project?
I
Yes.
think so.
Because in the area where you're talking about, the turn-ins, that's where they could go to a 3-lane section and or right turn, left turn lanes. Because it's dangerous right over there about the gradients. You pop over the hill.
Yeah.
And it's just,
No, I think their accident history will show that. Are we ready to move on to Project 72?
Is this along
1376.
This is the Sisterdale Road
Okay.
from 473, the south 473, up to the county line, Gillespie County line.
they just finished a lot of that.
Well, they finished it up south of there.
Yeah.
Northern, we were at the transportation workshop. This is one of the projects that is on TxDOT's rural tip to widen this and add shoulders. So I think it's in their short-term program. I can't remember which year it is, but it's in the next 3 years, 4 years. So
Is that to help us get to Lukenbach?
to the wineries, Bitsy. I know how you like your wine.
Okay, just checking.
I would think this should go short. It's TxDOT, and it's in the. I think we should include in our recommendations note that it's already in TxDOT's rural tip, northern.
Yeah.
Is there anything along with, didn't we have a cycling recommendation for the same stretch of road?
That's going
Is
to
there
come
something extra we could say?
It'll probably come up in Ben. I guess Ben, because I remember I'd mentioned turning, what is it, 30, what road is this again?
1376.
1376 into in pedestrian bike, and then it'll, I guess, wind and turn to go to Comfort. I forgot the name of that road. 473. Yeah, so it kind of gets you a loop. But I guess that would come up later when we get everything
Yeah, so
together.
we've started drawing on maps and all that, and we're being fairly ambitious. We'll probably pare it down, fairly ambitious, and we're looking at things like exactly what you're talking about, and I think that was on one of the maps we marked up, which Northern and I are sort of putting everything onto GIS. But we're also looking at there's some beautiful scenic roads, and thinking about making recommendations along those lines that we think about the character of some of our beautiful hill country roads.
Well, is there impact you could have now if TxDOT is already doing something so that it's not after the fact?
Well, one of my complaints, particularly about the 1376 project that went on for the last 20 years, seems like, is that my concern was it took this long to plan it and then build it.
Yeah.
And if we need to widen it now again because of too much traffic, that we're going to start that process, and then we'll do that again in 5 years. It's like, that just doesn't make sense.
Right.
So maybe the thing to do is say, while you're doing this, go ahead and widen that 3-foot shoulder to 8 feet or 6 feet and provide bike markings. So
Is it too late to do that? I mean, given that they budget the stuff and.
Well, they just now brought it up at the.
the
the rural,
Yeah.
The rural thing.
That was just for public input, which still goes on through the 1st of April.
Right. It's in, the project is already in their program. So they've got it's going to happen.
So hurry up, that's what we're saying.
Well, so in other words, I'm just reflecting that. No, I mean, but yeah, nobody has to wait on me to double down.
I'm going to be commenting. The comment period, anybody can comment on this on TxDOT's website.
This thing,
Yeah, April 7th.
We should
though,
all
is the
be
deadline.
it's got
Say,
this
go
in
get
the
it.
lock.
Okay.
Well, the problem
I'm not a
with that,
gatekeeper, guys.
what their problem is, they look at future traffic and they're saying, well, really the traffic isn't there right now to do it. I mean, I had to fight with the Federal Highway Administration all the time. So, yeah, that's what the problem is. This intersection you were talking about, if they would get in there and put center turn lanes and right turn lanes in there, it would pretty well satisfy what you need. But you don't want to put a roundabout where you have high-speed traffic on.
Are you already on
He already jumped to
103?
103.
I'm already on 103.
Yeah. John, don't you realize that you just had surgery? You're running ahead of us here.
I'm trying to move us along.
You're doing a good job.
My first comment was on the last one about widening their shoulders, because it depends on traffic volume.
Right.
And it's not there now, so they're not going to put the money there.
It's a narrow road when you're pulling a trailer or driving a bus or
Yep.
meeting somebody that's not in charge of their faculties.
Okay, getting to 103, they just need to improve the intersection with left turn lanes, center turn lanes, and right turn lanes, and it would pretty well be, but not a roundabout, not
You talking about 103 again?
103.
I've got a rejection of 103 recommended by John.
Yep. And do something else.
We burned off the 72 at the same time.
Do what?
Did we move 72 on,
Yes, we did.
like, the old conversation there?
Yes.
So we're going to remove the roundabout, but are we making an additional recommendation to expand the right-of-way and add turn
Well,
lanes?
you don't even need to really expand it, just they need to reconfigure it.
I don't go through there a lot, but I go through there. I don't see that intersection as a problem intersection.
I use it often because I have friends on Chaparral, but I don't encounter a whole lot of traffic. But I'm not going at the peak hours, so it may change quite a bit, in the mornings and the afternoons.
If they did anything there, they need to put a safety light so you can find where the turnoff is in the dark.
That's a good idea.
That's my
I mean,
experience.
it's hard to find in the middle of the night.
Coming south after dark. It's
Illumination.
right turn.
Especially coming down south from the winery.
Coming home
Just saying.
from Sisterdale.
Park, I'm looking back. Beer works too.
Dictated by what happens on the other end.
For the winery.
Add a road.
Yeah, and that was a comment here. It does say this is dependent upon what happens at 5 points.
Yeah.
Yeah, because if we dump Adler onto Main Street, this is going to be a dead-end road.
Not necessarily. There's two ways they can do it. You can make it dead end, or you can carry it on through
Okay,
without the roundabout.
we can talk about that later.
I'd say they just need a nightlight. Because, I have a hard time finding where to turn left.
Okay, out of respect to the commenter that offered this, I don't know who it was, but they suggested a roundabout.
No, I reject that.
I think a light would be, or traffic light.
Okay, so
blinking light.
so there is consensus to reject the roundabout.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, and so a committee source comment is to put illuminate the intersection. Is there any objection to that? And do you want that to be short or long?
Short, very short.
That's a good short-term project.
Next week will be fine.
Dark sky lighting, illuminated.
Of course. Okay, moving on to 37. This is a greenfield project that conceptually is on, I believe, the major thoroughfare plan. Is that right, Bryce? I think my recommendation here is that we offer an alternate routing that doesn't go through the apartment complex. And that may be extending Honeybee North a little bit and go around that.
Well, I think we need to offer it, you don't want to go through the apartment complex, but you don't necessarily want to go down Honeybee. What you want to do is tie into Lattimore Lane at Johns Road. In other words, you need to extend this little orange line all the way down to Johns Road, because Honeybee Lane is just something like
Right.
20 feet wide.
Right.
It's not going to.
It's not a road.
It's just a gravel.
It's a dirt road, yeah.
It's somebody's driveway.
But I do think the idea has merit, and I think it ought to be
Well, it's got merit.
modified. But I think it should be a long-term project
Right.
that's offered in the context of the major thoroughfare comments that we have offered in the past, that it's there to be used by people who develop that land as they develop it, not used to go acquire right away.
Correct.
So it wouldn't involve a line on a map where we haven't spoken with the property owners. It's just a recommendation to make a connection.
I think what we would do is something,
It's got to connect
Like
to John's
this.
Road. It
and we
can't
would
connect
say
to
major
Huntsville.
thoroughfare, and then we'd have comments that would say,
But is that private land? You just
it is.
drew that through?
It is.
Well, we said we were not going to do that if we don't go talk to them. We were saying we were going to connect point A to point B.
I'm going to nominate Bob to go talk to him. I think we should go, I'll go talk to, is that Mr. Vogt?
I have no idea.
Yeah, that's John Eddie's place.
Good luck.
Well, I'm not saying I'm going to convince him, I'm just going to tell him we're putting a line on your map, or a line on your property. But we're not suggesting that they go buy it. We're suggesting that if you ever develop it, whoever develops this, that they would have to build it. But we're not, nobody's recommended coming after that.
But it needs to go all the way from John's to 87.
His front end loader.
Okay. Get out there competing front end loaders.
So in any sense, this is long-term?
Yeah, it's long-term.
Oh, yeah.
Yep.
Can you add that to my list of things to go talk to the owner?
Thank you, Don.
Are we ready to move to 184?
I am.
This is a recommendation to add a turning lane to Adler between basically 5 Points and Esser Road, or FM 474.
Make it a 3-lane section. That should be a short-term setup.
I agree with that, and I will tell you that the county is funding drainage at No Name and Curry Creek culverts to make sure that it is, working with the city on that. So I think it's short-term, and I think it's a great project.
Well, I think the city might be looking at some road enhancements
Right.
there in the upcoming bond, so.
Yeah.
I don't know.
They're talking about that next week at 5 o'clock in here.
They or we?
I'm here as precinct 1 now. Take off my other hat, put it on. But I'm saying that to y'all too. Show up next week at 5 here. The city will be talking about streets and roads for bond proposal stuff.
What day did you say?
Tuesday,
Thank you.
right before city council meeting.
Okay. Got a recommendation coming. Moving on to 193.
I'm sorry, so what did we do with 184? Leave it-
Short-term recommendation.
What street is this? Is this Plant Street at the bottom?
It looks like Plant. It's there where the
But I see the word avenue. Didn't plant a street.
Correct.
It's an avenue.
Is it?
North Plant
well, it's
Avenue.
I don't.
It's an avenue. That's
Yeah.
plant.
It is planned.
All these years.
City does that. Turner is not Turner Street. It's on the sign Turner Street. It's Turner Avenue though on my address. City was slighting on the stickers for the sign. That's where the YMCA is, and future parkland's going to be right there. That electrical substation.
What do they want to do there?
A better crosswalk.
So I can say firsthand, I drove through this intersection about 2 hours ago, and their city guy got painted today. I don't really remember if this was addressed today or not, but it was pretty painful. I need to drive it through it.
So there's also multiple stops in this crosswalk. It's really weird. So you can stop before the crosswalk, or you can stop in the crosswalk because of the way the intersection's lined up at Topper One and Adler and Plant. And so I know what they're talking about because it is very confusing. There's two sets of stops on the Plant side crosswalk.
Because of sight and visibility.
Correct.
So when you're at the intersection, your
You
first
can't
stop,
see
you
around
can't see, yeah.
Adler, but it's a four-way stop right there. So it is a weird intersection and does need improvement, but I don't know what that means.
Well, I mean, we just recommended Adler, so
Right.
I think we could dispense with this project. Since it's, if we do 184,
It's going to change that anyway.
193 will be
Correct.
taken care of. So we'll just nix this one.
And they're painting it today.
Can't get any quicker than that.
All right, I'm going to suggest that the next one, which is a greenfield project, it's extension of Adler to the east, that we defer consideration of that until we have a additional committee.
Well, that's, well, I just say leave it as a long-term project. It's on the city's thoroughfare plan. We shouldn't do any more with it.
Well, Jonas remarked several times that that's across family land, and I know he has a keen interest, and just out of deference to him, I think we need to let the full committee discuss this.
But that doesn't mean you should take it off.
I'm just saying, let's wait until we have more people here, and then we'll talk about it. So it's what was it, Ben, that you would do it later, or what was the?
Consider it later.
Yeah,
Postpone consideration.
there you go. Postpone consideration. '53. This is a recommendation on Ammon Road at Cibolo Ridge Trail to, said roadway is dangerous due to speeding traffic down Ammon and limited sight distance. Traffic speed should be more heavily enforced, but a stop sign here would edit the high-speed flow and provide a safe avenue for ingress and egress. Sounds like that's a request for a stop sign on Ammon Road at Cibolo Ridge Trail.
You think anybody'd stop?
That's in the county.
People here from that area that don't want
Yeah.
to be there. Just saying.
Why couldn't they put flashing yellow lights and stuff up there?
I guess they also have their mailbox off of Ammon. Adds to the complexity, but I guess.
Are there safety protocols required by the county?
Are they what?
Are there safety protocols required by the county of state?
Well, it takes action of commissioner's court to install a road sign, a regulatory sign.
There's no particular setting, no safety.
I think that there are some cases, but in other cases, we can put one up. I think from a traffic standpoint, I think the manual uniform traffic control devices, that there are protocols for that. I don't know, Marcus.
I haven't run across them.
Yeah.
Usually people are trying to get rid of them when I've talked to them. Unwarranted signal stops. I know certain jurisdictions try to avoid putting stop signs unless it's warranted.
Right.
You're kind of looking at it the opposite way most of the time.
I think that there is a warrant, and it has to do with the number of accidents, and there's several different things. It's not like a traffic light.
Why couldn't they put up, like I said, a yellow flashing signal, but then leading up to that, reduce speed intersection, Really, I think that's about as much as you could do there.
What's the cross street
It's
There-
Cibolo Ridge Trail. There's
That's
probably,
why.
and the population of those neighborhoods that come off of that?
There's not a lot.
20.
Maybe
more than that.
Maybe a little bit more.
What do you think?
30, 40
comments?
houses.
There were 0 comments on this?
Are there broader issues with speeding along Ammon?
I think
Yes.
that's the issue.
Yeah.
That's
Oh,
the
that's
issue
the
that's trying to be solved with the stop sign.
And my observation is you can put all the flashing lights and yellows and greens and reds and purples, and they're going to signs. Unless you have a log out there for a speed bump, they're not going to slow down.
Needs to be curvilinear.
It seems to me like it's not necessary or very low on the
Priority.
on the need list.
I agree. You do all this stuff, they're not going to slow down.
You know, I drive this road a lot, and I go slow because it's hilly. It goes up and down, you bump around, and I just go slow. But I know there are drivers, some high school students, who drive fast, and I think a few tickets would solve that problem, you know? Because I saw a police officer
Yeah.
sitting on the side of the road one day.
I have too. I've seen
And I was
more
going
deputies.
30, but I immediately changed to 20 because I didn't want to take a chance.
So for this one, the public comment, they suggested a four-way stop, or a stop sign. It seems like the issue is actually the speed. So is there a recommendation to fix the speeds out there?
I tried that approach on SH 27 in Comfort because I had complaints about speed. I said, don't worry about a signal, just put a stop sign, make everybody stop, and that way they'll have to slow down for the stop sign. They said, we can't do that. Okay, so I assume that there is some MUTCD rule about if you really do this that would make it hard to enforce a traffic ticket written for violating a stop sign. I think what we can do, and what I can do, is forward this comment to Road and Bridge and ask them to consider some signs, and also forward it to the sheriff's office and ask for increased patrolling out there. Now, I will tell you, this isn't in my precinct, but in my precinct, the most common complaint is speeding on roads, everything from Shooting Club Road to Upper Sisterdale Road. I mean, people just drive fast everywhere they go. So,
On Turner Street.
and we don't have enough police officers, and we'll never have enough to do this, but I'll forward it to them, and can we use that to dispense with the road?
We can.
Would you add that to my list, Northern?
So what's the status of using cameras and remotely monitored speed? I mean, sad but true fact, every time my husband and I come back from Europe, we have a speeding ticket follow us home.
Slow down, Bitsy.
Well, we could just understand the signs, we'd be doing well. But you see what I'm saying? It's, do we do things like that here?
For a while, I know the state of Texas was allowing traffic light cameras that would take pictures of people who ran
Right.
traffic lights. But I think that they,
Been challenged.
they threw them out. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Those of us that have master's degrees in assistant driving have learned that.
Didn't realize that was a grant.
How'd you get on this committee?
At the comedy school?
All right. Here's one, reference ID 116. This is the curve in Ammon Road, the one that's farthest north.
Yeah.
This actually was recommended by a TxDOT consultant, and the county was willing to pay for part of this, but I think the city of Fair Oaks elected not to pursue it.
I think it should stay,
As a long or short?
depending on what happens, I guess, with the development, but let's just keep it on as a short. It probably won't happen short. It'll probably end up being long, as long as it's taking the development to go forward at the corner, the woods or whatever it's called now, the preserve. Because I know that they're planning to solve some of these issues with their development. I don't know if it was this one in particular or the one further. I think it's the one further south, which is not in here, but I guess being it a long term. I think it'd be a good long term.
Can you write the recommendation here?
Yep.
Marcus, and explain that, the background and all that stuff that is relevant, so it'd go along?
It'd be long.
Next project, 217. This is an operational request for a four-way stop sign at Battle Intense and Keeneland.
That's in Fair Oaks.
I'm trying to remember why it hasn't been done yet.
Is this where the roundabout was proposed? It was,
No.
It was another.
That was Fair Oaks Parkway and Dietz.
Okay.
I know they restriped the stop bars there. And I think there's just not a lot of traffic. is the
Honestly,
issue.
I drive this quite a bit too, and I rarely have to wait more than a couple of seconds at the stop sign to turn onto Keeneland. I don't, whoever made the suggestion doesn't agree, but I don't think it's a huge problem now.
Yeah, I don't think it's a problem either.
And the area is almost fully developed out.
Yeah, with all the large,
So we dismiss this one.
I believe so. I think it's the best way to approach it.
Dismiss.
Reference ID 16. This is the connection from Esperanza Drive to, what's the name of that street?
Bentwood.
Bentwood?
Is this a road or a bike path?
This is a
It's
bike.
just an access.
This connection is made in various ways, that some are pedestrians on the road. This one was a road.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Well, remember Jeff said that when you tie them into Esperanza, that's private streets, HOA. And then from Bentwood across, that's a
Public.
floodplain area. So, I mean, it's a good idea just for the kids to get across, but I don't know.
I think a lot of this depends on whatever ends up happening with Adler. Because if Adler is extended, or if Adler comes down just north of the Bentwood subdivision line, if there's not a way to have Adler go all the way across by the power lines, which seems to be an issue, if the owners are willing, you could have it come across the southern perimeter of that, then I really don't think you would need a road like this extending, because there's an issue with the flooding anyway. And, long-term, right now, you've got about 60 kids from this neighborhood that go to that elementary school. Whether that's a long-term thing 10 years from now, I don't know.
There's also part of the development along River Road and those commercial areas, trying to connect all those neighborhoods and commercial areas,
In the
like
front.
with a road parallel to River Road instead of something up north.
Yeah.
So
Winding
that might
woods.
solve some of those issues, connectivity issues.
I'd suggest that we postpone any consideration of this one, and that we postpone it and consider it along with 12, which we're postponing, and I think Rich makes a good point. Everybody okay with that?
I'm good with that.
Holy moly.
What is this?
This is brilliant.
Oh, that's Bob, that's your house.
Wow. Anarchy.
This is a recommendation for an operational improvement. It says best streets immediately behind HEB, streets heavily used as an access to the rear side of the store's parking lot and to curbside pickup and pharmacy areas. Best is an alternative to main Bandera Road entrance. The heavy traffic load plus the high number of cars exceeding 30 miles an hour pose a safety risk to the nearby residents. Occupants.
Well, since I live at the bullseye of this is not my suggestion, by the way.
But worried about your drawing skills.
I have a feeling I must know whoever did it because our neighborhood's quite small. The comments are spot on. And it's not only going to be the HEB that Fair Oaks doesn't want needs to get built at Dietz. We also need one at Bergheim to ever get the traffic on Marsh Streets under control from HEB traffic. It's just, it makes sense. People want to come down the best street to go to HEB.
It's true.
And they don't want to even go up to Highland. So given that Highland is so much wider, people, the most popular route's probably Highland to Wanda into the back side of HEB. But it's not only HEB. If you will imagine, look at South Main, people coming south on South Main, turn right on Bess, and then left on Water. Guess why? To avoid the traffic light at Main and Bandera.
Yeah.
People coming east on Bandera turn left on Water Street, right on Bess. Guess why? To avoid the same traffic light. So we have traffic coming through our neighborhood at massive amounts. I mean, way, way more than there were even 2 or 3 years ago. I would think, in spite of what we've heard from informally from city staff, a recommendation here might just be traffic calming in terms of speed humps all over these residential streets, and not including Highland, because Highland is primarily commercial with a few residences. Because it is a safety issue, but I don't know what, it's already a 4-way stop at Water Street and Bess, and it's terrifying to sit on my front porch watching the people race through the 4-way stop without even a hint of slowing down. I mean, it's fascinating and frightening. So we have Mustang races coming down Water Street every evening about 6, and it's a mess. And can be a quiet neighborhood. I think it just needs some help. I don't know what all the yellow lines were intended to do, but if you want a suggestion about what ought to happen in our neighborhood, that would be it.
So are you saying speed humps on Bess or on multiple streets?
Best, Water, and Wanda. One in every block.
Right.
Yeah, Wanda gets a lot of traffic on HEB.
So does Best. Come hang out with me on my front porch. We'll have a glass of wine.
So I think the idea would be to push people to Wanda.
Highland to Wanda.
So then
But Wanda still needs a speed hump. They don't need to be racing to HEB. The prices aren't going to change.
the gas.
Well, that's
The gas prices may change.
That's debatable, Bob, with inflation. It may be, who knows, by 6 o'clock.
When
When
the war ends, they'll calm down.
Yeah, so I'm just kind of curious. I would like to see the map. I mean, if we wanted to talk about this problem at this area, one of the additional streets that go through is School, just further beyond Highland. And School is a street that we've talked about possibly enlarging with turn lanes and larger shoulders. We understand that the right-of-way is not there, but that is another way to come around some of that traffic on Main Street in Bandera, which is the way I use and connect with Highland, and then take a right, I guess, up Wanda to that entrance
A
there
lot of people,
on Wanda.
they already do that.
But there's an entrance on Wanda, and it's not cutting through the neighborhoods, it's going behind the church. That road is much larger, large enough to stage the parade. And so I think if you want to actually talk about this area as a problem, maybe expanding the footprint to look at would be helpful.
I think you get lost in scope. I think you can make the problem too difficult to solve. Because the traffic that I see out my front door is people wanting to either avoid a traffic light at Main and Bandera or get to HEB who live on the eastern part of Bernie.
Yeah.
It's that simple. It has nothing to do with School Street. Those people are coming in, I don't see them. The people on Wanda do. Bless their hearts.
So would you make those mid-block, like halfway between Main Street and Water Street on Bess? And
Yes.
okay.
I see 6 speed humps, one in the middle of every one of those blocks.
Okay.
And then maybe if you look at HEB, it doesn't have it has its primary access is off 46, and then there's if you call that secondary access is to the subdivision that they were talking about, but maybe a through street that would go north to connect to Highland may be the answer, so that you can avoid, so you can push people to Highland.
There is, it's odd, but if you'll look in the parking lot of HEB,
There is.
there in fact is the connection to the Baptist church parking lot.
And that may be the recommendation.
But you're going right into the parking lot of the church.
Yeah,
I don't know how you, that doesn't have any legs.
You know, I
You're talking
think
about
in
that
this
stub
case,
there
I think,
that goes into the parking lot of the church?
Yeah.
That's probably not going to happen.
No, it's not. That route is what he's talking about.
Yeah, and what Bitsy was talking about, that's Tyson, I think it is. Well, where it ties into Main Street is just south of the signal light. And if you've ever tried to get in and out, it's too close there.
Rich?
yeah, you know, I just think that we have an issue as Bernie develops. We've got to protect some of our residential neighborhoods that are right off of Main Street from a quality of life point of view. And I don't really see any need to widen any of these roads or anything like that. But I realize that bumps have a cost to them. But I agree. I see how people speed on Wanda in that area. And, this is a nice residential neighborhood. And we have others on the other side of Main Street that will have similar issues as time goes along. So I think we need to be sensitive. And Bob, I'm well aware of the history of your neighborhood where the residents feel like they've been besieged by encroaching commercial developments. So
The only suggestion I would make is that we not put one in the section of Wanda Street between Bess and Main Street. I think all on the west side of Wanda is all commercial. There's no access there. And on the east side of it, I don't think there are any residences there.
Well, there's one house for sale, then it's a big open area.
But it's all been zoned commercial now, so they're just waiting on their ship to come in.
So, I mean, it's not like we're protecting residents, but
Okay.
north of there, I mean, that would make 5
Yeah, north
speed
of Best
humps.
Street, there are residents.
And that would solve the residential problem.
Point taken.
Short term?
I'll write it.
Bob, all right.
I don't have to use this graphic, do I?
Yes.
Put one here.
Any
Man,
members of the
too.
audience want to make a comment? I mean, Ms. Rudd had to leave. One here, 2, 3. We're at 3:45. I'm going to suggest that we conclude our activities for the day and go to public comment. We okay with that? Sure. Very good. Thank y'all for your hard work. We actually did pretty well.
Northern has some.
One suggestion or comment or just a plea, please consider the big packages like a textbook in high school or college, but that comes back with you for the next meeting.
Yes.
Yes, yes.
Good suggestion.
Yes, that's correct.
We got to check it back in.
No, it's free. They give it to me.
These books are free.
No, this one's college book is definitely not free.
It's not free.
No,
But
no.
UPS does a nice job printing.
But they are different pricing than we had.
Cheap.
At our next meeting, we'll do some more of this. Hopefully, we will also hear from the policy committee on their work and continue to move forward. Our next meeting will be the first week in,
April,
no, I bet you we're going
31st of March.
31st of
or
March.
the last day of March.
Today's the 15th.
Yeah, it'll be the 29th.
29th.
Okay, second opportunity for public comment. The lady in the pink shirt. Oh, Mr. Keene.
I don't usually like to do this sort of thing. My name is Mike Goodwin. I'm one of the Ammon Road rebels, if you will.
Okay.
Let's see. First of all, item 16, the Brentwood Esperanza. I'm relatively new here. I've only been here 21 years. But when Esperanza was put in, the rumor was there was a connector road through there, but the city council lady on the Brentwood side approved closing that off because the residents on Brentwood didn't want it. And so that's why there's only one way in and out of Esperanza. But if you looked at the original development plan, it was there. The second one is the Ammon Road stop sign, flashing light, whatever. Big considerations. Gemini Oaks is 40 feet down the road from the entry to Cibolo Ridge. Actually, the entry to Cibolo Ridge is over the hill. The exit to Cibolo Ridge is at the top of the hill, if you will. And then Gemini Oaks is another 60 feet down there. So if you're coming toward Bernie and you put a stop sign there, you're going to back up people getting out of Gemini, and people that may be coming that way to turn into Cibolo Ridge are going to go through the stop sign and stop to make the turn. So it's a difficult intersection for whatever that's worth. And the last one is to go back to the Fair Oaks Ranch. And I will ask, I went to a Fair Oaks Ranch city council meeting last week. And at that meeting, the developer of that new subdivision stood up and said the Ammon Road widening is a done deal, the flattening of the curves is a done deal. And they conceded that they moved their density from, I think, 635 units to 435 units. And then under his breath, he kind of said, and some multifamily and an assisted living facility. And when you did the math, they're going to put 733 living units in that subdivision as it is currently proposed. My sense of watching the body language of the council was not favorable to that. And the alternative to that was the hint that they're going to sue the city of Fair Oaks if they don't get their 733 living units. So from the Transportation Committee's position, 733 living units going down Ammon Road as it is now is just going to make life terrible. You know, in the mornings, everybody knows the backup. It's there, so it's just going to be tough. I try not to go anywhere before 10 o'clock in the morning. So anyway, thank you. That's my comment.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Hi, my name is Bonnie Clan, and this is my first meeting, so I don't know what's been covered previously or not. But
Well, can you say your name one more time?
Bonnie Clannon.
Okay, got it.
And I just kind of wanted to touch on this whole Wanda thing and get to the root causes of why people are cutting through these residential areas. And it's because our main thoroughfares are so messed up, in particular 46, with the bridge going over I-10. I mean, that whole project alone has caused so much congestion within our town that I just kind of feel like instead of hitting and missing everywhere, if we look at the root causes, as Kamala would say, I guess, of why this is happening. And I know me in particular, I hate cutting through residential areas because I've lived on one of those streets before. But even with someone who doesn't like to do it, starts doing it, it's for pretty good reason because things are so messed up on our major thoroughfares. And I honestly think that if we can just get that project done on 46 and I-10, a lot of things may improve before we get too drastic with all the speed bumps. And believe me, you don't want one of those speed bumps in front of your house because it makes a terrible racket. I've already lived through that. So I'm just going to leave that one at that because I don't know how much time I have. But I just wanted to throw some ideas about the roundabout situation, that we are still a somewhat rural community. And whenever I taught my son to drive, you always had to assume that there was a trailer on the back of that pickup truck that's going by you. So be sure that that truck has cleared before you change lanes. And we have the equestrian center right there. I don't know how big, I'm not an engineer, how big a roundabout has to be for a big old 350, Ford F-350 pulling a big giant horse trailer out of the equestrian veterinarian clinic there, or out of the fairgrounds where we show our horses. But I would think all of these proposed multiple roundabouts maybe have some effect on these poor trailers trying to get on 46 from one end of town to the other, in addition to the huge increase of cement trucks that we have just incurred with the creation of Tex-Mex, whatever it is, right there outside of Esperanza. Those are very heavy trucks, and unless that roundabout is really big, you're going to have some tippage over with those super heavy trucks. So I just wanted to throw those ideas out at you for the whole roundabout situation. I'm not opposed to roundabouts, but we are not driving Priuses here in Bernie as of yet. But we may in the big scheme. The intersection from Hell there at Herf Road and 46, that is just the worst case scenario with Champion traffic coming. I see a lot of that intersection is Champion trying to get back to Fair Oaks. Those kids go to Fair Oaks. And that's where that left turn going west to southbound is. That's the Fair Oaks. Plus you have the Bernie High School kids coming down and hitting that intersection. And it's just a nightmare. So what I was wondering, and this may have been addressed already, but is the traffic timing through your traffic signal maintenance been adjusted for certain times of the day? Because I'm noticing now that the eastbound traffic on 46 from Main Street approaching that intersection is backed way the heck up. So I don't know if the lights had been changed so that it gives more left turn signal out of Champion, if that's happened already, but...
You're at 3 minutes.
I'm sorry.
It's okay. Thank you for your comments.
Can I just throw a thought? You might research a truck apron for roundabouts, and that's how that solved those concerns that you brought up. Yeah, truck apron.
Ms. Gerhardt.
Hi. I have a statement and a question. First, the question is, at the last meeting at the end, y'all were addressing the very touchy subject of the Southeast Quadrant, and I don't know, I got in at about 8 minutes past the meeting starting today, but was that thrown out, or is that contained in this document, and is this what you're dealing with now, or is there more? because it didn't continue, like we didn't
Right.
continue.
I believe that is going to be contained in a recommendation, a policy recommendation.
It is going to move forward?
Well, it doesn't mean it's going to move forward. I think, I mean, the committee will have to say, I believe what's going to be considered by the committee is a policy recommendation that says and this is just a draft, so Zach, this is not what's going to happen, okay? I think what will be considered by the committee is a statement that says the committee declines to draw a line on the map through the southeast quadrant in response to public opposition, environmental sensitivity, blah, blah, blah. This will not address the traffic problems and congestion in the area. If the city desires to move forward, or the county or the state desires to move forward with such a quadrant, that should be done in the context of respecting people's property rights, take into consideration ways to mitigate the environmental concerns as much as possible, all the things that need to be loaded up. I believe the committee will consider a statement like that, but I don't know.
Okay. And then two, just in reference to the agendas, and y'all are doing a great job getting through this stuff and the minutia of all of it. However, it just seems to be so fragmented in direction. So if this is truly informing the public coming to the meetings or watching them on Zoom, then isolating them in sections I think would really help, because it's kind of throwing everybody all over. And these drawings are very small. So, and that's just my opinion, but I'm sure you can understand that a lot of people are like, okay, we were talking over here and now we're way over here, and in tiny little bits and pieces. And, maybe break it out to where this is absolutely what we're throwing out completely together, thrown out, and the rest of it's on the table, something. But anyway, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Gerhardt. Any other comments from the audience that's here? Mr. Kyle, Ms. Deaver, or I'm guessing Chad Carpenter?
No, sir, nothing from me.
I think I can hear you. Go ahead, Denise.
No, sir, nothing from me as well.
Oh, okay.
No comments for me.
That was Chad. Lance, anything?
No, sir.
Okay. Well, I believe with that, we are adjourned.